Marcus Harrington never expected to own lakefront property, especially not in the upscale Whispering Pines community. When his eccentric uncle Tobias passed away, leaving him 5 acres with a private 2-acre lake, Marcus was as surprised as anyone. The reading of the will had been dramatic, Uncle Tobias appearing via pre-recorded video, his wild gray eyebrows dancing as he announced, "To my nephew Marcus, who always loved nature more than money, I leave my most prized possession, Hummingbird Lake. The neighbors have been trying to get their hands on it for years. Don't let the vultures take it from you." The lawyer had shifted uncomfortably, while Marcus sat stunned. A middle school science teacher with a modest apartment, he suddenly owned prime real estate worth millions. 3 days after moving in, Marcus discovered why his uncle had called the neighbors vultures. A glossy gift basket arrived at his door, delivered by a smiling woman in tennis whites who introduced herself as Evelyn Windsor, HOA president. Buried beneath the expensive wine and artisanal cheese was an official letter welcoming him to the community and informing him that according to newly updated HOA bylaws, all water features exceeding 1 acre were designated as community recreation zones. His lake, the letter explained, would now serve as a neighborhood swimming and boating amenity from Memorial Day through Labor Day. That evening, as Marcus stood at the edge of his lake, a family of otters played near the shore, utterly unaware their home was about to become a playground for the wealthy. His phone buzzed with a text from a block number. "Check the boathouse lockbox. Password: vultures. T." Inside the weathered boathouse, Marcus found the lockbox hidden beneath loose floorboards. Inside was a leather-bound journal, his uncle's HOA battle diary, and a handwritten note. "They've been trying this for years. I've left you what you need to fight back. Don't trust anyone in Whispering Pines, especially if they bring pastries." The journal revealed a decade-long war. Uncle Tobias had fought the HOA at every turn, documenting each of their attempts to seize control of the lake. The most recent entries detailed how board members had begun discussing the Water Features Amendment shortly after Tobias's cancer diagnosis. There were photographs, meeting minutes Tobias had somehow obtained, and even recordings of conversations. His uncle had been thorough in his paranoia. Most disturbing was a map of Whispering Pines with certain properties circled in red. A note in the margin read, "Pattern established. Target properties with amenities. Change bylaws. Force compliance or foreclosure." His uncle's lake was circled, as were 12 other properties. 8 were now marked with X, already claimed. Marcus spent the night reading, the pieces falling into place. The lakefront mansion built where a nature photographer's wildflower meadow once stood. The community garden planted over what had been an award-winning koi pond. The expanded clubhouse parking lot covering the site of a private tennis court his uncle had mentioned. At dawn, Marcus walked the property line, seeing it through new eyes. The neighbor to the north, a board member, according to the journal, had extended his dock 6 feet over the property line into Marcus's lake. Another neighbor had cleared trees right up to the boundary, creating a view corridor directly to the water. When Marcus returned to the house, he found a business card tucked into his screen door. "Gerald Thornton, HOA treasurer. Let's discuss your lake situation. Lunch today? My treat." A handwritten note added, "We're prepared to be generous." For a moment, Marcus considered it. The property taxes alone would strain his teacher's salary, and the HOA fees were steep. He could take their offer, move back to his apartment, and return to his comfortable life. Then he spotted the family of otters again, playing in the morning sun. In the shallows, a blue heron stood perfectly still, waiting for breakfast. Above, a pair of eagles circled in the brightening sky. This wasn't just property, it was a sanctuary. Marcus picked up his phone and composed a text to the number that had contacted him last night. Message received. "Who are you? How did you know about the lockbox?" The reply came seconds later. "A friend. Your uncle helped me once. Meet me at Riverside Coffee, 2 p.m. Come alone. I'll be wearing a purple scarf." Marcus looked out at the lake once more, then at the HOA welcome basket with its hidden threat. His decision was made. He would honor his uncle's final wish and protect this place, whatever it took. They tried to turn my property into a sculpture garden, Sophia Liu explained over coffee the next morning. An environmental lawyer with a sharp mind and sharper tongue, she'd been documenting the HOA's tactics for years. I filed for agricultural exemption and filled it with artistic beehives. They couldn't touch me. Marcus's eyes widened. Beehives? That's perfect. That afternoon, while rereading his uncle's journal, Marcus discovered a folded blueprint hidden in the binding, designs for floating structures his uncle had never implemented. When he combined this with what Sophia had told him, the plan crystallized. Floating beehives. Elena Vasquez, the apiarist Sophia recommended, laughed so hard she nearly fell off Marcus's dock. A former corporate lawyer who'd abandoned 6 figures for 6-legged friends, Elena understood both bees and bureaucracy. It's absolutely mad, but theoretically sound. They use floating apiaries in the Mekong Delta. But will it work legally? Marcus pressed. Elena's eyes sparkled mischievously. County Code 15.73 classifies beekeeping as agricultural use, which supersedes recreational zoning, and the Endangered Pollinators Act prohibits disturbing registered conservation habitats. If we position this as an environmental research project, they worked furiously over the next 2 weeks. Marcus emptied his savings to fast-track permits and construction. Elena sourced 10 hives of gentle Italian honeybees. Sophia drafted ironclad legal documentation and emergency court filings, just in case. The floating platforms were works of art, hexagonal rafts with specialized anchoring systems that would remain stable even with jet ski wakes. Marcus painted them yellow and black, making them impossible to miss. Each platform held 2 hives and bore official-looking Aquatic Pollinator Research Station signage. 3 days before Memorial Day, they deployed under cover of darkness. By dawn, thousands of bees were happily exploring their new waterfront property, buzzing between the platforms and the wildflower meadow Marcus had hastily seeded. They're going to lose their minds, Elena said gleefully as they watched from shore, the morning sun glinting off their creation. That's the plan, Marcus replied, raising his honey-sweetened coffee and toast. Operation Bee Lake is officially underway. The Whispering Pines HOA meeting resembled a corporate boardroom more than a community gathering. Chandeliers cast harsh light over the 20-person mahogany table where board members sat like royalty, while residents were relegated to folding chairs along the walls. Marcus arrived early, armed with his uncle's journal and evidence he'd gathered showing the suspicious timing of the amendment. He noticed how people whispered behind manicured hands when he entered, his Target khakis and button-down a stark contrast to their country club attire. I've reviewed the voting records, Marcus announced when given the floor. He dropped a stack of highlighted papers on the table. The Water Features Amendment passed by exactly 1 vote, cast by proxy for my uncle, who was in hospice and physically incapable of authorizing it. A collective intake of breath swept through the room. Gerald Thornton's face reddened. Are you accusing us of something, Mr. Harrington? I'm simply stating facts, Marcus replied, his teacher's voice projecting clearly. And here's another fact. 3 board members purchased jet skis the week after the amendment passed. Evelyn Windsor rose, diamonds flashing at her ears. This is preposterous. Your uncle was difficult and unreasonable, just as you're being now. An elderly woman in the back called out. Tobias Harrington was the only one who stood up to you vultures. The room erupted into competing voices. When order was restored, the board called an impromptu executive session, dismissing everyone for 20 minutes. Upon return, Evelyn announced their compromise. The lake opening would proceed as planned, but would be limited to weekends only. And, she added with a cold smile, since you're so concerned about the environment, Mr. Harrington, you'll be pleased to know we're requiring that you maintain the lake to our standards, including weekly water testing and installation of a proper swimming area. At your expense, of course. As Marcus left, a hand caught his arm. It belonged to Sophia Liu, a quiet woman he'd noticed taking detailed notes. They did this to my koi pond last year, she whispered. But I found a loophole. Meet me tomorrow at the coffee shop outside the gates. Don't tell anyone. The The bee whisperer of Whispering Pines became headline news. Video of wealthy homeowners fleeing bees went viral. Environmental groups rallied behind Marcus's innovative conservation efforts. By week's end, the HOA had issued emergency cease and desist orders, threatened lawsuits, and attempted to pass new bylaws specifically prohibiting floating structures of any kind. Marcus countersued, citing harassment and illegal amendment procedures. The case attracted a prominent environmental firm offering pro bono representation. Meanwhile, forbidden honey pre-orders flooded in after a social media influencer proclaimed it the most exclusive honey in America, harvested from contested waters. When the emergency hearing date arrived, the courthouse steps were crowded with protesters. Environmental activists with Save the Bees signs on one side, HOA supporters with Protégez our property values on the other. Inside, Marcus's legal team presented damning evidence. Board members had systematically targeted individual properties for years, falsifying votes and manipulating bylaws to acquire access to private amenities. Uncle Tobias's meticulous journal provided the smoking gun, a decade of documented abuses affecting dozens of homeowners. The judge, visibly disturbed, ordered an immediate investigation and suspended all HOA amendment powers pending review. 2 weeks later, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. Evelyn Windsor arrived alone, without her usual armor of designer clothes and practiced smile. She looked older, tired. "The board wants to negotiate," she said simply. "Privately. Before this gets any worse." The settlement was comprehensive. Hummingbird Lake would remain Marcus's exclusive property. The HOA would pay damages to affected homeowners and restructure completely. In exchange, Marcus would establish a controlled community education program around his beekeeping operation and create a honey co-op that would benefit the entire neighborhood. By Labor Day, Whispering Pines Honey Collective had become reality. Marcus's lakeside classroom buzzed with activity as residents of all ages learned about pollinators. Gerald Thornton's grandson proved an enthusiastic apprentice beekeeper. 3 families had installed their own backyard hives. The former golf course was being partially rewilded with native plants. At the harvest celebration, Evelyn approached Marcus as he filled honey jars. "My father was a beekeeper," she said quietly. "In Vietnam, before we immigrated. I haven't seen hives like this since I was a child. Would you like to help?" Marcus offered her a spare veil. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. As she carefully worked the smoker, decades of corporate polish fell away. "My grandchildren are visiting next weekend. Perhaps you could show them how this works." Later, as sunset painted the lake gold, Marcus sat on his dock watching bees return to their floating homes. His phone buzzed with a notification. Forbidden Honey had won a regional sustainable agriculture award. Uncle Tobias's leather journal lay open beside him, its final pages now filled with Marcus's own entries. On the lake's far shore, neighbors gathered for an impromptu picnic. Children waded carefully in the shallows, pointing excitedly when they spotted fish or frogs. The community had been transformed, not by force or rules, but by unexpected common ground. Marcus dipped a finger into a fresh honeycomb and tasted his victory. It was, indeed, the sweetest thing he'd ever known. Memorial Day dawned with picture-perfect weather, -78 degrees, cloudless sky, light breeze. By 8 a.m., a news van was parked at Marcus's gate. "Mr. Harrington, Channel 5 News. We received an anonymous tip about an innovative conservation project launching today. Care to comment?" Before Marcus could respond, a convoy of luxury vehicles arrived. Evelyn Windsor led the procession in her white Range Rover, followed by board members and residents. Many wore matching Lake Day t-shirts, and several trucks pulled expensive water equipment. "What is the meaning of this?" Evelyn demanded, emerging in a designer swimsuit, then freezing mid-stride as she spotted the floating platforms. Her face paled beneath her perfect makeup. "Welcome to the Hummingbird Lake Pollinator Conservation Project," Marcus announced, gesturing to the water where his yellow and black structures floated serenely. Each platform now bore university and conservation agency logos, courtesy of Sophia's connections. We're thrilled to have media coverage of our launch. The news crew swarmed forward eagerly, capturing footage of the platforms where thousands of bees were already busily coming and going. "This is outrageous," Gerald Thornton bellowed, yanking his grandson away from a curious bee investigating the child's popsicle. Marcus smiled calmly, handing out press packets. "I've obtained all necessary permits. The university is documenting how aquatic environments affect pollinator behavior. It's quite groundbreaking." "You can't do this," Evelyn hissed, dragging Marcus aside. "People have paid thousands for lakefront property with guaranteed water access." "Interesting point," Marcus replied, loud enough for the reporter to hear. "I've been wondering how the HOA justified charging lakefront premiums for a lake they claimed was common property." The reporter perked up. "Is there some dispute about ownership of this lake?" Before Evelyn could intervene, chaos erupted. A teenager on a jet ski, Gerald's son, had ignored the warning boys and was racing toward the central platform. "Stop him!" Elena shouted, but it was too late. The jet ski's wake rocked the platform. The hives shifted, and suddenly, thousands of disturbed bees rose in a dark cloud. What followed was cinematic. People screaming, children crying. The jet ski abandoned as its rider dove into the water. Cars peeled out, spraying gravel. The news crew captured everything, including Evelyn diving into her Range Rover, dozens of bees in pursuit. Only Marcus, Elena, and Sophia remained, protected in their bee suits. "That could have gone better," Marcus said, watching the last car disappear. "On the contrary," Sophia replied, pointing to the news van now interviewing furious residents. "It went exactly as planned."